Hello there, Grandma here. Now we're going to start a new Famous Five book, and this one's called Five Go Off to Camp. And I expect it's going to be another adventure, don't you? And this is chapter 1, and it's called Holiday Time. 2 jolly fine tents, 4 ground sheets, 4 sleeping bags. I say, what about Timmy? Isn't he going to have a sleeping bag too? Said Dick with a grin. The other 3 children laughed, and Timmy the dog thumped his tail hard on the ground. Oh, look at him, said George. He's laughing too. He's got his mouth stretched wide open. He's a darling, said Anne, hugging him. Best dog in the world, aren't you, Timmy? Woof, said Timmy, agreeing. He gave Anne a wet lick on her nose. The 4 children, Julian, Dick, George and Anne, were busy planning a camping holiday. George was a girl, not a boy, but she'd never answer to her real name, Georgina. It's absolutely wizard being allowed to go on a camping holiday all by ourselves, said Dick. I never thought our parents would allow it after the terrific adventure we had last summer when we went off in caravans. Well, we shan't be quite all by ourselves, said Anne. Don't forget we've got Mr. Luffy to keep an eye on us. He'll be camping quite near. Pooh, old Luffy, said Dick with a laugh. He won't know if we're there or not. So long as he can study his precious moorland insects, he won't bother about us. Well, if it hadn't been that he was going to camp too, we would never have been allowed to go, said Anne. I heard Daddy say so. Mr. Luffy was a master at the boys' school, an elderly, dreamy fellow with a passion for studying all kinds of insect life. Anne avoided him when he carried on about boxes of insect specimens, because sometimes they escaped and came crawling out. The boys liked him and thought him fun, but the idea of Mr. Luffy keeping an eye on them struck them as very comical. It's more likely we'll have to keep an eye on him, said Julian. He's the sort of chap whose tent will always be falling down on top of him, or he'll run out of water, or sit down on his bag of eggs. Ooh, that would be messy, wouldn't it? Old Luffy seems to live in the world of insects, not in our world. Well, he can go and live in the world of insects if he likes, so long as he doesn't interfere with us, said George, who hated interfering people. This sounds as if it will be a super holiday. Living in tents on the high moors, away from everybody, doing exactly what we like, when we like, and how we like. Woof, said Timmy, thumping his tail again. That means he's going to do as he likes too, said Anne. You're going to chase hundreds of rabbits, aren't you, Timmy? And bark madly at anyone who dares to come within 2 miles of us. Now, do be quiet a minute, Anne, said Dick, picking up his list again. We really must check down our list and find out if we've got every single thing we want. Where did we get to? Oh, 4 sleeping bags. Yes, and you wanted to know if Timmy was to have one, said Anne with a giggle. Of course he won't, said George. He'll sleep where he always does, won't you, Timmy, on my feet? Couldn't we get him just a small sleeping bag, asked Anne. He'd look awfully sweet with his head poking out of the top. Timmy hates looking sweet, said George. Come on, Dick. I'll tie my hanky round Anne's mouth if she interrupts again. Dick went on down his list. It was a very interesting list. Things like cooking stoves, canvas buckets, enamel plates and drinking cups were on it, and each item seemed to need an awful lot of discussion. The 4 children enjoyed themselves very much. You know, it's almost as much fun planning a holiday like this as having it, said Dick. Well, I shouldn't think we've forgotten a thing, have we? No, probably thought of too much, said Julian. Well, old Luffy says he'll take all our things on the trailer behind his car, so we'll be all right. I shouldn't like to carry them ourselves. Oh, I wish next week would come, said Anne. Why is it that the time seems so long when you're waiting for something nice to happen, and so short when something nice is happening? Yes, seems the wrong way round, doesn't it, said Dick with a grin. Anyone got the map? I'd like to take another squint at it at the spot where we're going. Julian produced a map from his pocket. He opened it and the 4 children sprawled around it. The map showed a vast and lonely stretch of moorland with very few houses indeed. Just a few small farms, that's all, said Julian, pointing to 1 or 2. They can't get much of a living out of such poor land, though. See, that's about the place where we're going, just there. And on the opposite slope is a small farm where we shall get milk, eggs and butter when we need them. Luffy's been there before. He says it's rather a small farm, but jolly useful to campers. Those moors are awfully high, aren't they, said George. I guess they'll be freezing cold in the winter. They are, said Julian, and they may be jolly windy and cold in the summer too. So Luffy says we'd better take sweaters and things. He says in the winter they're covered with snow for months. The sheep have to be dug out when they get lost. Dick's finger followed a small winding road that made its way over the wild stretch of moorland. That's the road we should go, he said, and I suppose we strike off there. Look, where the cart track is shown. That would go to the farm. We shall have to carry our stuff from wherever Luffy parks his car and take it to our camping place. Not too near Luffy, I hope, said George. Oh no, he's agreed to keep an eye on us, but he'll forget all about us once we've settled into his own tent, said Julian. He will really. 2 chaps I know once went out in his car with him for a day's run, and he came back without them in the evening. He'd forgotten he had them with him, and had left them wandering somewhere miles and miles away. Good old Luffy, said Dick. That's the sort of fellow we want. He won't come springing up to ask us if we've cleaned our teeth or if we've put our warm jerseys on. The others laughed, and Timmy stretched his doggy mouth into a grin again. His tongue hung out happily. It was good to have all 4 of his friends with him again, and to hear them planning a holiday. Timmy went to school with George and Anne in term time, and he missed the 2 boys very much. But he belonged to George and would not dream of leaving her. It was a good thing that George's school allowed pets, or George would certainly not have gone. Julian folded up the map again. I hope all the things we've ordered will come in good time, he said. We've got about 6 days to wait. I'd better keep on reminding Luffy that we're going with him, or he's quite likely to start without us. It was difficult to have to wait so long now that everything was planned. Parcels came from various stores and were eagerly opened. The sleeping bags were fine. Super, said Anne. Smashing, said George, crawling into hers. Look, I can lace it up at the neck. And it's got a hood thing to come right down over my head. Golly, it's warm. I shan't mind the coldest night if I'm sleeping in this. I vote we sleep in them tonight. What, in our bedrooms? Said Anne. Well, yeah, why not? Just to get used to them, said George, who felt that a sleeping bag was 100 times better than an ordinary bed. So that night All four slept on the floor of their bedroom in their sleeping bags and voted them very comfortable and warm as toast. The only thing is, Timmy kept wanting to come right inside mine, said George, and honestly, there isn't room. Besides, he'd be cooked. Well, he seemed to spend half the night on my tummy, grumbled Julian. I shall jolly well keep the bedroom door shut if Timmy's going to spend the night flopping on everyone's bag in turn. I don't mind the flopping so much as the frightful habit he's got of turning himself round and round and round before he flops down, complained Dick. He did that on me last night. Silly habit of his. He can't help it, said George at once. It's a habit that wild dogs had centuries and centuries ago. They slept in reeds and rushes, and they got into the very way of turning themselves round and round in them to trample them down and make themselves a good sleeping place. And our dogs go on turning themselves round now before they go to sleep, even though there aren't any rushes to trample down. Well, I wish Timmy would forget his doggy ancestors were wild dogs with rushy beds, and just remember that he's a nice tame dog with a basket of his own, said Dick. You should see my tummy today. It's all printed over with his footmarks. Fibber, said Anne. You do exaggerate, Tim. Oh, I do wish Tuesday would come. I'm tired of waiting. It'll come all right, said Julian. And so it did, of course. It dawned bright and sunny, with a sky that was a deep blue, flecked with tiny white clouds. Good weather, clouds, said Julian, pleased. Now, let's hope old Luffy has remembered it's today we're starting off. He's due here at 10 o'clock. We're taking sandwiches for the whole party. If he's remembered them, it won't matter because we're sure to be able to eat them ourselves. And there's always Timmy to finish things up. Timmy was as excited as the four children. He always knew when something nice was going to happen. His tail was on the wag the whole time. His tongue hung out and he panted as if he'd been running a race. He kept getting under everyone's feet, but nobody minded. Mr. Luffy arrived half an hour late, just when everyone was beginning to feel that he'd forgotten to come. He was at the wheel of his big old car, beaming. All the children knew him quite well because he lived not far away and often came to play bridge with their father and mother. "Hello, hello," he cried. "All ready, I see. Good for you. Pile the things on the trailer, will you? Mine are there too, but there's plenty of room. I've got sandwiches for everyone, by the way. My wife said I'd better bring plenty." "We'll have a fine feast today then," said Dick, helping Julian to carry out the folded-up tents and sleeping bags, while the girls followed with the smaller things. Soon everything was on the trailer, and Julian made them safe with ropes. They said goodbye to the watching grown-ups and climbed excitedly into the car. Mr. Luffy started up the engine and put the lever into first gear with a frightful noise. "Goodbye," called all the grown-ups, and Julian's mother added a last word. "Don't get into any awful adventure this time." "Of course they won't," called back Mr. Luffy cheerfully. "I'll see to that. There are no adventures to be found on a wild and deserted moor." "Oh, do you think that's true? I doubt it." "Goodbye." Off they went, waving madly and shouting goodbye all the way down the road. "Goodbye! Goodbye! Hurrah, we're off at last!" The car raced down the road, the trailer bumping madly after it. The holiday had begun. And that's all for now. Till next time. Bye-bye.